So let's look at the Gemara. The Gemara says, Rav u'Shmuel, the Amrei Tarvaihu halacha ke Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. So both Rav and Shmuel agree with Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. Let's go back for a second and remind ourselves what was the machlokes between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. According to the Tana Kama, the shechita is defined by the entirety of the cut. Meaning that if you cut within the upper ring, right, the tabas gedola, if you cut within the upper ring of the tabas gedola, even if you cut 90% within that ring and the last 10% you veer above the tabas gedola, according to the Tana Kama, it's no good. Why? Because the Tana Kama says, I look at the cut as an entire unit, and if the cut goes anywhere above the tabas gedola, it's pasul. Okay? It's not a valid shechita, it's called hagrama. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says, we look at rov. If rov of the cut was within the tabas gedola, so at that moment that rov of the cut is within the tabas gedola, the clock stops. The clock stops, the animal is considered shechted, and wherever else you cut after that, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda doesn't care. Okay?
Well,
cares, but he doesn't passel it als hagrama if you go above that. Okay, clear?
So he goes with the rove. So let's say if you started above, but the rove was below.
That's an interesting question, right? So that's an interesting question. Simon's asking an interesting question. Why is your question so interesting? Because in the case which we have in our Mishnah of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, before he gets into the area above the tabas gedola, the clock has stopped. Right. Once he's hit rove, the clock stops. According to your question, the clock is still running, right? He starts his shechita above the tabas gedola. Then he comes into the tabas gedola. It would seem to me that would really be hagrama, because
hagrama right off the bat.
Right off the bat, yes, because when you go above the tabas gedola, according to the way
but according to them, they're saying rove. So if
rove, however, rove. In other words, why are they saying rove? They're saying rove because the clock stops after rove.
He doesn't just say rove. He doesn't only say rove. He says first you did 50%. He did 50% plus one in the tabata gedola. So he doesn't just say rove.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. So he doesn't just say rove, right? But it's rove. It's rove within the tabas gedola, and he also says that it's also the clock stops. In other words, rove means the clock stops. What you're saying, and I agree with you, Navi, that when he starts above the tabas gedola, the clock's still ticking. So that means that part of the cut is outside of the area which is kosher l'shchita, at least according to the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. We'll see tonight another opinion, but at least according to that, the cut is out of the area where the upper is above the upper limit of the shechita, and it would be hagrama. I think that's the way. I think it's a good question, Simon, but that's the way you'd have to look at it, and you understand why the difference between that. Okay, so the Gemara begins by saying, Rav Shmuel da Amrei Tarvahu halacha ke Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. Rav and Shmuel agree that they agree with the position of Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. They say the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, we're not surprised by that because we have a principle of rove and we apply rove to many things. So if we apply rove to many things, it would make sense that Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda, whose position is based on rove, that's the halachas like him here. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda lo amar ela b'tabas hagedola. And this position of Rabbi Yehuda, of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, who says rove, says the Gemara, this only applies to the tabas gedola. We'll see what that means in a second. Hoel umakefes is called hakane. Aval b'sha'ar tabaos lo. So what is he saying? So we learned last week, and Simon, you have the sheets in front of you, right? We learned last week that only the tabas gedola completely encircles the kana, the trachea. Everything else, all of the lower pieces of cartilage are like U's, right? They don't go, they don't close back here. They just go here, right? They go around here, but they don't close back here.
The cartilage doesn't go on.
Like a horseshoe.
There's a skin, but it's
Right, there's tissue, there's connecting tissue, obviously, but the cartilage doesn't go all the way around. So why should we care about that? In other words, if Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda embraces the principle of rove, so then do the lower rings cover rove of the kana?
that's the issue.
Right? They do, don't they? So Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda should hold that just like rove applies when I shecht through the tabas gedola and then veer above it, so too rove should apply to the lower cartilage rings. And that even in the other tabaos, even though they don't completely encircle the kana, the trachea, it should nevertheless be valid. If he holds rove in one case, he should hold rove in the other. Isn't that logical? It is logical. But what does the Gemara tell us? Gemara tells us not true. Says the Gemara, V'af Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, who says rove by shchita of the tabas gedola is good, lo amar el b'tabas hagedola. Ho'elu makefes es kol hakana, aval b'sha'ar tabaos lo. So what does it mean, aval b'sha'ar tabaos lo? What's pshat? What does that mean?
I mean, it means it's not the case that 50 plus a smidge, is necessarily rove in those tabaot because it doesn't go 360 degrees.
Okay, so there's two ways to look at it. Natan is suggesting one way of looking at it. In other words, what is he saying? When you define rove of something, can I use this? Okay.
There.
Okay. No, it's not to drink. Okay, let's say that this is the tabas hagadola, goes all the way around, okay? But the other tabaos start here and only go to here, okay? So let's say you cut through 51 and a mashu of this tabas. So what Natan is saying is that might be rove of this tabas, but it's not rove of the kana.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily rove of the kana, okay? Not necessarily rove of the kana, okay? So, according to what Natan is saying, what if I cut 80%? In other words, how do I define rove? Do I define rove looking at this whole thing, right? I look at this whole thing and I say, this is my area of rove. This is my area, and rove is a little bit more than 50% of this area. Or do I, right? And therefore, since the lower tabaos don't encircle the whole thing, I have to go more than rove of the lower tabaos. I'd have to go, let's say, I'm just picking out a number, let's say 80%. But if I went 80% on the lower tabaos, I should certainly be above rove of the kana. So according to Natan's explanation, that should work, right? According to Natan's explanation, that should work, right? Okay, so your explanation is number one. Second explanation, somebody tell me a second explanation. Why doesn't it work in the tabaos, the lower tabaos? What is the language of the Gemara? It works by the tabas gedola, hoil umakefes es kol hakana. Since it is makefes, since it encircles the entire kana. We saw in the picture, right, that the tabas hagadola goes literally around the entire kana. What about that? Implies that the reason, in other words, the reason why it works by the tabas hagadola is because the tabas hagadola encircles the entire kana. If we think logically about this, then the reason that it doesn't apply by the lower tabaos is because the lower tabaos don't go all the way around. So what does it mean because the lower tabaos don't go all the way around? One explanation could be, as Natan explained, since they don't go all the way around, you can't measure rove based on just that kana. I'm sorry, you can't measure rove based just on that tabas. Because that tabas maybe only covers 80% of the kana, because it doesn't go all the way around. And therefore, since it doesn't go all the way around, you can't measure rove of that of saying rove of the kana, right? That's what you suggested. Yes, you hear that? There's another way of looking at it, and that is perhaps we can say that since the lower tabaos don't completely encircle the kana, they're not considered kana. Right? They're not considered kana. And therefore what? And therefore, you can shech there, you can shech rov, but it's not going to matter. Now, what would be the nafka? You understand what I'm saying?
I'm confused.
Well, when we makom ashchita is really tabat gedola, and that's it.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
That's the implication of what you're saying.
No.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. That means the makom shchita is no longer.
The makom
Oh,
hashchita
oh.
is between the tabaos also. The makom hashchita is between the tabaos. You can feel between the tabaos.
Okay.
Okay? You can feel between the tabaos. So what would be, so in other words, what I'm trying to pull out a little bit, that's not a good word, but what I'm trying to klar, I'm not sure how to translate that, it's a Yiddish word for trying to make clear, I guess. What I'm trying to analyze is, what does the Gemara mean when the Gemara says, Lo amar ela b'tabas ha'gedola ho'elu makefes es kol hakana. So one way of looking at it is to say what Natan said. In other words, since the lower tabaos don't encircle the entire kana, then we say what? We say that rov of them doesn't necessarily mean rov of the kana. One explanation. But there's a possibility of another explanation. The possibility of the other explanation is, since the tabaos don't encircle the entire kana, they're not considered part of the kana. They're not considered part of the kana, and the obligation of shchita
what's the
is
kana
b'makom.
then? The air tube, not air tube, but I guess it's an air tube.
The kana
And between the rings.
So
of
you
the
could say the
cartilage?
kana is the tube, and where the tube is supported by the cartilage, it's not considered tube anymore. It's considered cartilage. Right, and the shchita has to be b'makom hakana v'lo b'makom hatabas. What about the tabas hagadola? Why does it work there?
Because it goes
It works there since it encircles the entire kana. It has the status of kana. You hear this?
I get the
Okay.
difference.
So what would the nafkamina be?
Well, it would make a big difference in terms of what shchitas are considered okay or not.
Okay, but what? Give me a nafkamina in just that highlights these two positions. Let's say that I shechted the entire kana.
Yeah.
I cut all the way through the kana, but right through the cartilage.
Under one explanation, you didn't cut through the kane.
Right,
You cut
correct.
Through the cartilage.
So according to the first explanation, which is what Natan was suggesting, namely that the reason rov doesn't work by the lower tabaos is because the tabat itself does not cover the entire kana, and therefore rov of the tabas is not necessarily rov of the kana. If I cut through the entire kana, nothing to talk about. Clearly, I've solved my problem.
Right?
On the other hand, if we say that the reason...
But when do we ever say that rov of the tabat is rov of the kana?
Well, let me ask you, when you do shchita, right? When you do shchita, you pop out the kana. What are you looking for?
We're looking to see that we
You're
cut
looking
through.
at percentage of the hole that was cut.
You're looking at a percentage of the hole that's cut, correct? Good,
The whole pipe.
We
the-
want
of
to
the
see the
pipe.
whole pipe.
right? So you want to go through it. You want to go through the pipe because when it comes to a bird, the pipe is so small that it's very difficult to measure rov. Because if you didn't cut through the whole pipe, would you allow that
No,
shchita?
we say as long as it's vadai rov, so long as you get vadai rov of one on a bird and vadai rov of both on an animal, that's considered okay.
Right.
But Simla Chadasha uses language of vadai rov.
Right, which
Like-
means maybe it's hanging by a thread.
Right, which happens, right?
Right.
You get that, like, you look at it and it's, the truth is it doesn't happen as much with the kana, it happens much more with the veshet, because the kana really kind of, once you start it, it just kind of splits.
snaps.
Well, more like, sort of like tears a little bit.
I mean, it just opens, right? The knife is sharp, it opens, the veshet is soft and especially on like a bird like a pigeon where the kana and the veshet are on opposite sides and you have to try to pull them together and it's hard to do. It's like you can get a veshet that doesn't go all the way through and you'll see like a hole in it and you have to make a determination. If you cut the kana, fine. You didn't cut the kana on a bird, you have to make a determination. Is this really vadai rove? Is it obvious that this is a rove of this siman?
Right. Okay, I hear that. So a bird, it's a little bit hard to discuss this, okay? But let's talk about a behema. Let's talk about a behema. You're shechting a behema, and now you're looking closely at the kana. So on a behema, you have to have rove of both simanim, rove of the kana and rove of the veshet, right? So you look at the kana. Do you look to see whether you shechted in the cartilage or not?
Well, we haven't really done that much behemoth, but we haven't really looked at that, no.
Right, right.
We're just-
So according to one way of understanding this Gemara,
We should be.
according to one way of understanding this Gemara, the shochet has to make sure that his knife that he cuts in between. In other words, he has to feel literally where his knife is going so that it's in between the cartilage. Because the cartilage itself, according to one possible interpretation of this Gemara, we'll see it later, is not considered kana. Okay? So just, those are the two possibilities for explaining this Gemara with a practical nafkamina, which we'll see a little bit later. Okay. Good, Navid, you got it? Simon, you got it? Okay. All right, good. I wish we had a kana here, just okay. But lungs might have to be sufficient. Okay. So the Gemara continues, and what does the Gemara say now? The Gemara says, about Bashar Taba'os Lo. Asks the Gemara, we're now 2 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Uvisha'ar Taba'os Lo? What do you mean? Right? That when it comes to other Taba'os, right? When it comes to the lower Taba'os, that the lower Taba'os are not good. That's what the Gemara seems to imply that Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda holds. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Bishar Tabas Lo Vahatanya. We learn the following. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says, Hashochet b'sha'ar tabaos, af al pi she'ein makifos es kol hakana, hoil umakifos es rov hakana, shchita sok shera. Okay? What is Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda saying? What is he saying about the lower tabaos?
It says if you cut rove of them, the shchita.
No, what is this? It says cut. He doesn't say anywhere you have to cut rove of them. He says you have to cut all of them.
Umakifot it. Oh, it's makifot it rove.
In other words, so what is Rabbi Yossi? What do we see from this? What do we see from this second part of the Gemara? In other words, it's not necessarily clear which of our first 2 interpretations are correct. In other words, says Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, since the tabaos, the lower ones, go and encircle rove of the kana, it is considered as if they encircle the entirety of the kana. And therefore, just like the tabaz hagdola, which has the status of kana because it encircles the entirety of the kana, so too these lower tabaos, since they circle rove of the kana, they have the status of kana. That's what Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would seem to say here. Yeah, clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, no, maybe.
I'm not sure it really solves the question.
I mean, which of those?
Yeah, because
It doesn't, but which one would it seem to solve? I mean, if I push you to pick pick the formula.
I think it supports my explanation better than the other.
Okay, tell me how.
Because he's saying that because they go almost all the way around, basically.
Yeah.
It's keilu they go the whole way around. 1. So if you get 50 plus a smidge, it's as if you got more than 50.
What are you adding to the Gemara that's not there?
Obviously something.
You are assuming that he is still talking about shechting rov.
You're right.
And it doesn't say that anywhere.
Well, it says shchitato keshera.
Right.
So what do you mean?
In other words, you shecht the lower tabaos. If you shecht through the lower tabaos, shchitaso kshera. Why? Because since it encircles rov, we give it the status. As if it encircles the entire kana, and therefore what?
Yes, you're right. I'm assuming that you're cutting through that.
Right. In other words, you could say push comes to shove. That really supports the second one. If it mentioned rov in here, then you'd be absolutely correct. But the fact that it doesn't mention rov in here, I could make, I think, a convincing or a strong argument at least that it's coming to support the second interpretation. Right? Okay. I don't want to get bogged down too much with this. Let's go weiter in the Gemara. Okay. So what do we have? So we now seem to have a problem with Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because on Yud Zayin Amud Beis at the bottom, the Gemara said to us that Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda lo amar ela b'taba'as hagidola. Right? He didn't say. He only said that what works b'taba'as hagidola, that rov works by taba'as hagidola, implying that rov doesn't work in the lower tabaos. Now the Gemara comes along and says, wait a second, we have a brisa that says Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Hashochet b'sha'ar tabaos, afa pi she'ein makifos es kol hakana, ho'el makifos es rov hakana, shchitaso kshera. Right? So we seem to have a machlokes within Rabbi Yossi, correct?
Potentially.
Isn't that what the Gemara is saying?
Well, it's trying to, yeah.
Okay, Navid, what's the position of Rabbi Yossi in the Gemara that the Gemara questions? What does Rabbi Yossi say?
I'm lost.
Okay. So Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says like this. He says, if you shecht rove through the tabas hagedola and then veer up, what does he say about that cut? No, what Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi
He
Yehuda.
says it's okay.
Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says okay. The
second
Tanakama, the first
says
opinion,
no.
says it's hagrama.
The second one.
The second opinion, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says it's okay. Why does he say it's okay? He says it's okay because once you've shechted rove of the tabas hagedola, clock stops, shchita is good. Where you shecht after that doesn't bother me, doesn't concern me. Okay? Now, the Gemara then went ahead and said, even Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda will agree that only works by the tabaz hagedola. But it doesn't work by the sha'ar tabaos. It doesn't work by the lower tabaos. In other words, the tabaos underneath the tabaz hagedola. Right? So,
Which means that if you go from one taba to the other,
let's say I went in like this. I shechted in like this, right? And then I went zoop, like that. In other words, I went in, and then I turned my knife and went like that.
Like a 90 degree we were talking
Yeah,
about.
you can't make a 90, it's sort of like it's got to be like an arc a little bit. Right? Practically speaking, it needs to be like an arc. In other words, your hand turns, and rather than the knife going straight through, the knife goes in a little bit through part of the lower tabaos, maybe even rove of the lower tabaos, and then veers upwards and goes
To the chitin.
straight through to the chitin. Okay, that's the question. It's weird, right?
yeah.
Doesn't really happen, but I mean, it happens that you turn, but it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it does. But I mean, look, there is.
I mean, it's like a 1 in a million chance of that happening.
Well, look, let's understand something, okay?
You cannot purposely do this.
That's probably true. That's probably true. However, we live in a world where before you guys shecht, what do? You get Kabbalah, you have a Bechina, they bang your knife into smithereens, whatever it is, okay? Imagine a world where the standards for Shechita were not that way. Where theoretically the shochet has to show his knife to the Rav. Theoretically, the shochet has to, but let's say he doesn't do that. Right? Let's say he shechs this behemoth. And now, he looks at it, he says, whoa, what happened? And now he comes to the Rav. And what has he got? He's got, he's got this cut that looks something like a fish hook, right? What's the story? Is it good or is it not good? That's what we're dealing with here, right? That's what we're dealing with here.
We're basically dealing with the principle of where is the makom mashchita and what happens if you get rove with it. Whatever, the chances are slim of this particular example, but we're dealing with that question ultimately.
Okay, so the Gemara. So first, the Gemara seems to say that Rabbi Yossi says that by the lower tabaos, sha'ar tabaos low, and then the Gemara says, "What are you talking about? We have a brisa that seems to say."
Yes.
That they're fine. So look at Rashi at the top of the Amud, top of Yud Ches Amud Beis. What does Rashi say? Hashochet b'sha'ar hatabaos shel hakana orov chalulo. Right? You shecht through the kana, or in other words, the entirety of the kana, or rov chalulo. What does rov chalulo mean? Halal is the empty space, the volume, basically. In other words, you either shecht the entirety of the kana, or here Rashi says you shecht rove of the volume,
between the rings.
Rove of the pipe, which is not necessarily rove of the tabas. You shecht rove of the pipe. That halal is the donut hole, right? That's basically what it's, the donut hole, right? Donut hole isn't there, right? There's no such thing, right? But that's the whole. So you shecht rove of the pipe, not rove of the tabaos, but rove of the pipe. So hoelu makifos es harov. The second line of Rashi says, Loha milsa nami amrinan ruba kukula. That when it comes to this matter, in other words, the matter of shechting through the lower tabaos, what does Rebbe Yossi b'Rebbe Yehuda say? Ruba kikula. Just like he says ruba kikula when you shecht in the tabas gedola and then veer off, so too he says ruba kikula when you shecht in the lower tabaos. As long as you shecht through rove of the chalal, as long as you shecht through rove of the pipe, right? In other words, I have a pipe, right? What Rebbe Yossi b'Rebbe Yehuda is saying is, I can't go by rove of the cartilage, because since the cartilage doesn't surround the entirety of the kaneh, I can't go by rove of the cartilage. What do I have to? I can go by rove of the cartilage in the tabas gedola, right? Why? Because the tabas gedola encircles the entire kaneh, but I can't go by rove of the tabas on the lower one. Why? Because the lower ones don't completely encircle it. So if they encircle it 80% and I do 50% of 80%,
only got 40%.
right? I don't have rove of the pipe. So Rashi is saying it has to be kol hakana o rov chalulo, and ho'ol mokifas esarov lahamil sanami amrin ruba kakula lishavinhu kane umakom kosher l'shchita. Okay. So who's right? Natan or me? Natan. Natan's explanation was correct. Okay?
About volume.
We're talking about volume. In other words, according to this Rashi, we'll see later. I'll have a little bit of a reprieve later on. But for right now, we'll see. What we see right now from Rashi is that as long as you shecht rove of the pipe, not rove of the lower tabaos, but rove of the pipe, the air, the hole of the pipe, as long as you shecht rove of the whole of the pipe, you're good. even on the lower tabaos, but not rov of the tabas. On the upper, right, with the tabas hagdola, the top tabas, if you shecht rov of that tabas, that is the same as shechting rov of the pipe. Why? Because that tabas encircles the whole pipe. Okay, good?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Gemara continues. Let's go back. The Gemara continues. What does the Gemara say? Now, this is a, so this, is it a contradiction to what Rabbi Yossi said before?
I think it's just a further explanation of what he said before rather than a contradiction.
It's not a contradiction. Why not? Because what Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda said before was if you shecht rov of the tabas, that only works by, rov of the tabas only works by the tabas gedola. It doesn't work by the other tabaos. What does work by the other tabaos?
Rov chalala.
Rov of the chalalo, rov of the pipe. Not rov of the tabas, not rov of the cartilage, but rov of the pipe. Okay. Now the Gemara veers off, sorry to say that, but the Gemara veers off, right? Hagrama. The Gemara says, umugremes psula. That we know that a person who does hagrama, right? Umugremes is psula. What does it mean, umugremes psula? So look at Rashi. Rashi says, afilu ruba bitoch hatabas umiuta lema'ala mitabas hagdola. Okay? Whose opinion is this?
The other one.
Right? This opinion is the opinion of the Tanakama. Right? It's not the opinion. Remember, what did the Tanakama say on the previous page? Go back and look in the Mishnah of the previous page. Here the Tanakama said, Hashochet mitoch hatabas v'shir ba. Well, I guess it's the same thing. V'shir ba. Male hachut al penei kula. In other words, you shechted, you didn't veer off, you didn't veer up at all, because you left a thin band of the tabas hagadola intact, so you didn't veer off at all. Tanakama says it's good. That means if you did veer off even a little bit, it wouldn't be good. And that seems to be the opinion here of this, that what we're seeing right now is that opinion, right? It's not a continuation of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. It is the first opinion in the Mishnah. Umugremes psula. SoHeid Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos. Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos said, Al mugremes shehi kshera. What did he say? He gave edus that mugremes is kshera. Wait a second. We all know, right? You all have Kabbalah, so you know that hagrama is puzzle. If you do a hagrama, it's one of the 5 psulei shchita. So what is the Gemara saying here when the Gemara saysHeid Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos that al mugremes shehi kshera?
Oh, maybe it means that he didn't hold the opinion of the Tanakama.
Which would be what?
It would be Rabbi Yossi's position.
No, because that's not hagrama. Rabbi Yossi does not consider that hagrama.
No, but in other words, he's saying if the Tanakama is if you had, let's call it 60%, and then you went into the chitin, he would say that's okay. Rabbi Yossi would say that's okay.
If you have 60% in the tabas gedola,
Right.
and then you go into the chitin, Rabbi Yossi would say that's okay.
Right, and the Tanakama would not.
The Tanakama would not, correct.
Right? So, if you're saying what the Tanakama's position as to Hagrama, but he gave Edud that it's kosher, it could mean that he holds Rabbi Yossi's position because he's saying you got 60%. If you veer it up afterwards, you're still okay.
It's one way of looking at it. Is there another way of looking at it? I guess there is an implication of the Is there another way of looking at it? According to both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi, what is the upper limit of the makom hashchita?
Right, that's the other way. He might say that the chitin are okay.
Correct. In other words, Simon, could you just pass that, please? Okay. So we said before that according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, the upper limit of the makom hashchita was the tabaz gedola, right. I guess right here, right here, right here, the tabaz gedola. This Tana right here comes along, and Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos comes along and says, Amugremes shehiksheira, that's not the upper limit. Where's the upper limit? The upper limit is the shipua of the kova, right? Here's the kova, right? This is the thyroid. The shipua of the kova, it's like the esrog we spoke about last week, right? Here's where it starts to slope up. This is where you put your thumb and press in to try to get the kana and veshet to pop out. You're pressing in on this, trying to dislocate the kana and the veshet so they pop out. So according to Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos, you can go up to where the shipua begins. So that's why he says mugremes is kshera, meaning that if I go above the tabaz gedola, it's fine. It's fine. Why? In other words, this is not even the Tanakama. This is
right. This is rejecting both positions.
This is rejecting both Rabbi Yossi, the Tanakama, and Rabbi Yossi. The Tanakama says above this.
It's not rejecting them. It's saying it because he's not saying 50.1% would be problematic, or that you need 100. He's saying the makom shchita is different.
Right. So from that particular, Natan is technically right, as he usually is, right? From that particular perspective, as to what is the upper limit of the makom shchita, Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos is disagreeing with the Tanakama and disagreeing with Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda have their own issues, right? They have their own things that they debate about. Whether rove is sufficient, whether rove of the cut is sufficient, whether we look at the whole cut or whether we look at rove of the cut. But both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda say, once you go above that taba'as gedola, you're out of bounds. The whistle blows, you're out of bounds. The question is, according to the Tanakama, if the whistle blows at all, shchita is no good. According to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, if the whistle blows but you've already done 50%, 51%, it is good. Along comes Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos, and he says, no, even if you go above the tabas gedola, until you reach the perpendicular to the shipua of the kova, it is considered a kosher shchita. It's not considered hagrama. His language is a little bit misleading. When he says hagrama, right? Psul hagrama kshera, he doesn't mean his hagrama is kshera. He means what the Tanakama, what Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, what most people would call hagrama, Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos says is kshera. Why? Because he has a different definition of hagrama. What is hagrama according to him? According to him, hagrama is into the chitin. If you don't go into the chitin, it's not hagrama, and we don't know how he feels about rove or not.
Right.
But he just has a different upper limit, okay? How shaykh is this lemaisa?
No, it's talked about in Simla Chadasha. I mean, they talk about that they're basically says Baal Nefesh lo yochal mimeno. It says, most people won't eat this, but really, if it's I have said merubat tzorech gadol, and you're in the chitin, then maybe there's a place to rely.
Oh, so what is the simla? What is the Simla Chadash relying on?
Yeah, obviously, it appears to be this.
He's relying on this. Why? Because what's the language which is used here? Ha'id. What does ha'id mean? What is ha'id? What is edus? Edut. What is edut? It's testimony. An aid is a witness. So when it says ha'id Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos, what is it saying? He's giving testimony. That has a legal weight to it. He's giving testimony that it's good. So even though Lamaisa we don't rely on it, b'shas harchak, b'di'evid, b'makom hefseid meruba, yesh al ma lismoch.
That's
Right,
basically.
yesh al ma lismoch. Okay? Okay. All right, so the Gemara, let's go right to the Gemara continues. What does the Gemara say? Says the Gemara. Now we're gonna come back to Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Tarte Ka'amar. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda said two things. Rav u'Shmuel savre kvase bechada u'pligi ale bechada. And Rav and Shmuel, you remember where did we hear Rav and Shmuel? The previous Amud, if you look back, right? Rav and Shmuel follow Rabbi Yossi. They agree with Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, right? That 50 and a smidgen, 50 and a smidgen, 50 and a mashu, that is considered valid. Okay, so they follow Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. Now Rabbi Yosef is coming along saying, actually, Rav and Shmuel don't follow all of what Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda said two things. Obviously, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda said many things. But in this matter, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda said two things. One thing Rav and Shmuel agree with, one thing Rav and Shmuel don't agree with. What are those two things? Says the Gemara. V'halo amar ka'amrei hachi. What is the Gemara now saying? The Gemara is saying, look at Rashi here. Hold on a second. Let me just get the place. So go back to Rav Shmuel savre le kvase bechada. Dechaticha ruba b'makom shchita kechatichas kula. They agree with what? His statement that once you shecht rove of the tabas gedola, or rove of the halal, rove of the pipe, it's considered a good shechita. They agree with that. And they disagree with pligi Allah b'chada. They disagree with him in the other one. What is that? The lishave sha'ar hatabaos makom shechita. Right? What does Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda say about the other tabaos?
They don't agree on this rove concept for them.
No, not necessarily. Here you're going to see. Here I get my little bit of a revival. In other words, what do they say here? They say, look at what Rashi says. The lishave sha'ar hatabaos makom shchita. How is Rashi understanding what we said back there with Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda? How is he understanding that? He's not understanding it saying that, like Natan wanted to say, if you cut rove of the halal. So he's understanding it to say, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says that the tabaos are makom ha-shchita. Why? Because since they cover rove of the tabas, they're no different than the tabas hagdola that covers the entire kana, and therefore it's considered makom ha-shchita. Rav Shmuel disagree, and that's what Rashi says here. Pligi ala bechada. They disagree about what? They disagree in this one area. The l'shave shar hatabaos makom hashchita mishum ta'ama deruba kukula lo mashbinan. In other words, what do they say? That Rav and Shmuel agree with one application of ruba kukula, and they disagree with one application of ruba kukula. And based on this word of Rashi at makom hashchita, I'm going to claim a little bit of validity back to what I said earlier, which is why I brought it up earlier, because I knew this Rashi was going to give me a little bit of support. Which is what? That Rav and Shmuel, they heard these two things that Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda said. What were the two things? Number one, if I shecht rove of the tabas hagdola, it's good. Rav and Shmuel shook their heads. Yep, sounds right to us. Then they heard the second thing Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda said, which is what? That if I shecht rove of the tabaos, the other tabaos, or even if I shecht all of the other tabaos, if I'm shechting literally on the cartilage, it's not good. Why? Because they don't consider it, like I mentioned earlier, makom hashchita. What does it mean they don't consider it makom hashchita? So here's the question: is how do I look at this pipe? Do I look at this pipe as a pipe? Sorry, not that. Right, as a pipe within a cartilage. In other words, the pipe is intact. It's just encircled by the cartilage. Or no, do I say where the cartilage, where the pipe and the cartilage are together? You can't separate the cartilage from the pipe. If you pull that cartilage away, what are you going to do? You're going to rip the kana. Right? If you pull that, unless you cut through it, if you try to pull the cartilage away, you're going to rip the kana. It's attached to the pipe. So there we could have a machlokes, and that's what we might be having here, right? Saying that if wherever the cartilage is, it's not considered kana at that particular point. Ein hachinami, you're cutting through the pipe, but because the cartilage is there, it's considered cutting through cartilage, not considered cutting through veshet, not considered cutting through kana. Okay. Which would mean, if we would follow this opinion of Rav and Shmuel, the second opinion of Rav and Shmuel, before you shech, what would you have to do to make sure that your knife is going through the space in between the tabaos? Now with a bird, that's almost impossible, if not impossible. Why?
It's too small.
It's too small. You can't.
Especially with a small bird.
Right? There's no way you could do that. There's no way you could do that. Right? You could only do that probably with a cow. I don't even know if with a daka you could do it. You could do it with a cow.
I don't know if you can do it with a daka.
I said you might not be able to do it with a daka. Right? With a goat.
We don't have enough. I don't
Okay.
think we have enough experience to make that determination, but certainly with a bird you don't.
Right. Okay. So I just want you to see this, right? That we might be grappling with two things here. We might be grappling with the upper limit of the makom hashrita. That might be part of what we're arguing about here. The second thing that we're arguing about is what's considered makom hashrita from the perspective of what's pipe and what's cartilage. Okay? Is cartilage considered pipe or cartilage not considered pipe? That's basically it. Simon's going like this, making me very nervous.
He's
Okay.
checking, he's trying to figure it out.
Okay, we have a few more minutes weiter in the Gemara. Okay, one more little thing here. Okay, so we did that. Okay, so the Gemara says, "V'ha lo amar ka'amar." What does it mean, "V'ha lo amar ka'amar"? Right. So look at Rashi. So if you look at Rashi, Rashi says, "V'ha lo amar ka'amre." V'ha hachi ka'amre. This is what it says. Rav u'Shmuel, right? It just mentions Rav u'Shmuel. V'af Rebbe Yossi lo amar. And instead, what does it say? In other words, before it said, the language is getting switched around here. And before it said, Rav and Shmuel only say this regarding one thing. Now we're going to switch the language around. And you know what? We'll stop here. We'll come back to this next week. Okay? Shkayach, guys. Okay, all you guys who were not here tonight listening to this, hopefully come next week.